Hello and welcome to Mystic Motivation, a podcast for witchy women. My name is Zoe Arnold. I'm a lunar witch, and today we're going to be talking about dream work, how we can work with the dream world to expand our intuition, to deepen our self-discovery, and also as a tool for healing. Dream work is represented of lunar witchery, right? Most of us go to sleep when the moon is out during the night. And this is very symbolic, quite literally symbolic of nature and how our intuition is highlighted at night, how the unknown is highlighted at night. And that too is our intuition. There is an aspect of nature that's rather mysterious. And in that unknown, in this stillness, kind of like the void of night, is where we can tap into our subconscious. This is where we have the potential to come to inner truths, inner clarity, where our intuition could come through and give us messages. And for some others, to even develop a connection to the divine, to spirit guides in the dream world, and to receive messages in that way. So if any of these areas are calling to you and you're wanting to expand on them, we'll be talking about a bit of all of this in this podcast episode, how you can begin to develop dream work and how it may help you. And so I wanted to give a bit of my own background in stepping into lunar witchery and dream work so that you may find relation to it, because I think a lot of what helps us develop consistent practices that actually pay off over time for whatever desired goal or reasoning we want to, step into a certain practice. If we have like a deep reason, a clear understanding of what led us to that practice, we're more likely to stick with it. And so I found this for me that, I didn't step into lunar witchery because I loved the moon. Like, who doesn't love the moon, right? But that's not the reason that I stepped into lunar witchery. The honest, truthful reason that I stepped into lunar witchery is because I had a fear of nighttime, quite literally. And you can see how like symbolically having a fear of night is representative of like a fear of my shadow, and therefore a disconnect from my intuition and a disconnect from my subconscious. And so that was something that over time of understanding, I was able to look at and see in myself. I had a childhood where I dealt with a lot of abuse. And so because of that, in my childhood at nighttime, I had a lot of fear. I was scared and I would go to sleep scared. Therefore, I had trained my nervous system to associate sleep with fear, sleep with uncertainty, with discomfort. And so when I began my spiritual journey, I was able to identify like, okay, my anxiety pops up at night. I have like a pattern of this popping up at night, and I was able to follow the breadcrumb trail of where that stemmed from. And so, oftentimes you hear the saying of like, wisdom comes from suffering, right? And in order to like empower ourselves, we have to go through the door of fear. And so I knew that in order to empower myself, I had to follow the exact trail of something that, rather than like it being something I desired to follow, it was something I needed to follow, if that makes sense. Like I knew that I needed a practice that was going to guide me in submerging myself in something that I had a wound around in order to empower myself. And so when I, stepped into witchcraft, and I was like, okay, what area do I need to work in? Because I had an understanding I have to go through the door of fear, right? And oftentimes when we face our fears and we conquer them, or we find like a way to work with them, we can become like a quote unquote master of that area, right? If we could face the things that make us very uncomfortable, or face the things that we feel like we have a weakness within, we have like a dual understanding of it. And then you could, from that perspective, right, you have like a deeper understanding because you see two sides of one coin, if this is all making sense. But long story short, I found the practice of lunar witchery, quite literally aligning myself with the cycles of the moon and aligning my practices with the moon and working with my shadow aspect, working with the unknown, working with my intuition. And a subcategory of lunar witchery is dream work. And so that's how my kind of path and need to work within this realm developed. And so all that to say that maybe you have a similar reasoning as me as to why you're wanting to step into dream work, or maybe it's different. Maybe in general, you just feel disconnected from your intuition, but find like a reasoning for yourself. Why is it do you think you're disconnected from your intuition? And why is it you want to empower that? what will that do for you? Because what's going to help you baseline with dedicating yourself to this practice to actually see results of a better intuition, better self-discovery and healing from this is that reasoning, because that's why you're going to keep coming back to it. That's going to motivate you when it gets hard or you feel like it's not working at first, because these types of things, like any witchcraft practice, it takes time to develop, because you think of the concept of like energy attracts like energy. We have to be willing to go through the changes that are necessary in order to match that energy we desire, right? And as aspects of nature doesn't change overnight, and neither do we. And so all of this to lay the foundation of dream work is beautiful. It's an amazing practice, and it's a really like rewarding practice. But I do suggest from experience to have that reasoning and that deep understanding, to have that reflection of why you're wanting to dive into it, because that will lead to the payoff. So all of that to say, that's my way of entering dream work. And that's where I would start your journey, with identifying truly why you want to step into the dream world to expand your intuition and gifts. So let's talk a little bit about how we can lay the foundation for dream work. And I honestly think this is the most fun part. It's where you get to ritualize your nighttime routine. So the answer for each of us will be different, right? For me versus you, what does your routine going into bed look like? That'll be very different. But for me, before I stepped into lunar witchery, dream work, when I would go to bed, I would just like, it would be like the hour before bed, I would just like shower or wash my face, throw on my pajamas, brush my teeth, and go straight to bed. There was like no ritual. There was really no time for stillness or reflection. I wouldn't like set any intentions before going to sleep. Like sleep was just something like I had to do. And so if you're similar to that, that's where we could see that first we must ritualize our routines going to bed before starting dream work. But maybe you're already somebody that like journals before bed or reads before bed. I think that's a great foundation and something to build upon. And so all this to say is that what we want to do when stepping into dream work is to begin to give our body, specifically give our subconscious mind, the signals that I'm ready to like tap into you, that like I'm ready to like welcome in messages, like I'm slowing down, I'm going to open up space to be intentional. And that really lays the foundation for your dreams to begin to give you messages. But we'll get to that in a second. But for example, and I wrote down a few examples here, getting ready earlier for bed rather than right before bed. So maybe 2 hours before bed, do your shower, wash your face, get in your pajamas, right? So that hour before bed, you can light a candle, burn some incense, drink a cup of tea, do a bit of reading or journaling before bed, and you make bedtime something that is like sacred and you look forward to, rather than something you either have to do, or if you were like me, that you had like a little bit of like anxiety around. You make it something where it's like you're priming yourself that like this is a space to like that can really nourish me and give me like perspective, that I can connect with myself in this thing that's like a necessity, rather than like, let me just get sleep over with. So reflecting on this aspect, the first thing, you know, after you've first identified your reasoning for dream work, the second thing is to look at, what does my routine look like before bed? Is it something that actually supports stillness and supports intention? Or is it a bit of like, I'm scrambling to get ready for bed, I dread like washing my face or showering and having to do all that, and then I'm going straight to bed, and you're laying down and you're thinking about the day? Like those things need to be set back a bit earlier, so that when we are going to bed, there's an open space, if that makes sense. And so step 2 of dream work, ritualize your evening routine. So now let's get into the juicy part, which is actually having the dreams, right? So whether you're somebody that doesn't dream often, or maybe you do and it doesn't make sense, or you're somewhere in between and it's like 50-50 if you remember or not, we'll talk about ways to increase each of these. But I wanted to start with a dream I had that kind of like instigated my kind of like pursuit of lunar witchery and dream work, because I think this is a perfect example of how our dreams can communicate to you, and also what dream work can do for you. So I had a dream and this was a while ago, but it stuck out to me so clearly. Like I communicated before, had a lot of like my anxiety would come through at night. Therefore, I would have like nightmares often. And like I had night terrors pretty bad. And I would like wake up like heart racing, things like that often. And that was something I dealt with a lot throughout my childhood and teenage years. And I remember one time I had a dream, and this was around like the start of my spiritual journey. And in the dream, I knew that it was a nightmare. I was like in this room. It was very eerie. There was no way out, but I couldn't even move my body anyways. And there was like this like monster in the corner. And I was like, okay, I'm in a dream right now. I became a bit lucid where it was like I was like recognizing that it was a dream and what was going on. And immediately like a voice came through that it felt like a higher self. Like it felt like a more like, here's what we're going to do, listen to me type of voice came through within me that was like, what if you just chose to believe that, okay, 100% this thing's about to charge at you and you've got nowhere to go, right? But what if you just chose to believe right now that like when it does that, you're going to look it straight in the face and you're not going to give it any reaction. And if you do that, it's going to disappear and everything's going to be fine. And so I did exactly that. The thing turned around, it charged at me, and it was like grotesque. It was creepy, and it came like right up to my face, and I just stared at it in like a very like primal animalistic way. It like tilted its head like a dog does, like when it's confused. And it like studied me for a second as if it was like surprised like that for like the first time, it like as if it was the reoccurring same, evil entity from every dream, like looked at me in surprise to see that I wasn't like giving it a reaction, and it disappeared. It literally like disintegrated in front of my face, and I immediately woke up. And that dream stuck out to me because here's an example of like interpreting dreams, like not just having that dream itself, but looking at it and understanding in the remembrance of it that I was like, that is what I need to do with my spiritual practice. It was such like a revelation for me at the time where I was like, I have to look at the things that I'm scared of. I have to look at the things that make me uncomfortable. I have to face them directly. And honestly, like show them who's boss, like literally submerge myself in the things that make me uncomfortable or that I've dealt with or that is like a weak point for me, and to face it head on. And that doesn't mean that you have the answers or that you're going to know how to handle it each time, but to stop avoiding it. Or on the other hand, to stop allowing the things that you're scared of or the anxieties to control you. And so that was, it was that experience that really taught me and showed me how much your dreams can give you messages from like a higher self, a higher perspective, and to nudge you in a direction that can really get you out of like a repeating cycle or get you out of just like, I don't know, like disempowering yourself to something external. And that's just like my own example, but like taking that in your own way of like allowing your dreams to guide you and trusting that like there will be, over time with practice, like your higher self can convey things to you through that, is to take that with you and to not take those dreams for granted, those signs for granted, because there is, dreams are kind of unexplainable, but I think it's kind of undeniable, especially with how many like ancient civilizations, for example, like ancient Egypt, they had temples devoted to dream work. They literally had these dream incubators where people would go and sleep and hope for messages from the divine. Like that was like such like a common practice that was done. And in like folk magic traditions, like dreams were seen as omens, not just like your subconscious running wild. Like there's so many traditions that like encourage paying attention to your dreams. And I think it's because when we allow ourselves to do so, it could be revolutionary. So all that to say that when you have a dream, record it. When you do have a dream, first thing when you wake up, write it down. And even if like the message or the sign isn't clear right away, it can come through later, and especially upon reflection, because what we want to promote when we start to have dreams or we want to dive into dream work is remembrance, stillness, and observation. Because the more that you train your brain to do that, the more that it's going to feel almost like safe enough to like give you messages like, okay, this is an avenue to communicate with myself. This is an avenue that I can like lean into now to heal, to grow my intuition, to tap into my gifts. And so all that to say, the dream being an example of like what type of messages you could take from it, but also like how you can heal from your dreams, because it was one single dream that I've carried with me to this day and really changed the trajectory I went down. And that's a potential for you. It just takes one dream to really shift your perspective. One message that comes through because you opened yourself up to it that really gives you clarity and certainty in what path you want to walk down. And so how do we develop this? Again, you've ritualized your night practice now. The next step is, no matter what, when you wake up, even if it's in your phone or you have an actual journal, write down anything you do remember. And it literally, even if you do not remember anything, to write that down itself, you are promoting your brain to reflect, like to actually wake up and think, did I remember anything? And to sit with a moment. Stillness, 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 moon energy, shadow work. These things require stillness. They require reflection. They require honesty. When you do have a dream, write it down, every single detail, and allow yourself to either, after you write down the dream, to write down your reflection, or to actually sit there and give your time to reflect. These are programming tools, quite literally, of getting your brain to do this. Because think about it, it's just like muscle memory, like a day after day showing up, learning how to ride a bike. Your body begins to like become accustomed to the bike, right? Like it's organic how you move, how you backpedal to brake, how you like know what type of like turns to make that aren't too wide or aren't too small. It's the same way with like promoting dream work. You over time, even if it takes weeks to get your brain to start like recalling dreams, with that consistency, you're creating the space to open up that avenue. And so a dream journal, I think, is unless you're somebody that's just an avid dreamer naturally, it is a necessity, because you have to create that understanding for your subconscious that like this is an avenue to use to communicate to me, because your subconscious is always trying to communicate with you. It might not seem like it. It might seem like, oh, like how do you develop your intuition? Like, no, your intuition is there. Developing your intuition is getting you to open up an avenue of like, I know to look into this space because I've opened a space for my intuition to communicate there, if that makes sense. But dream work becomes a place to heal. Like the dream example I used, it communicates with you what you have to do. Dream work helps you notice patterns. The more dreams you have, the more you record them, you will see patterns of repeating messages in different ways to get you to look at something, to observe something. It helps you reconnect with yourself. You get to see how you truly feel about a situation, where you may have a wound, what passion is calling you. It could be really anything. And for those of you who may relate to any anxiety around sleep or a disconnect around sleep, it opens up an avenue of curiosity, excitement, intention, ritual, instead of any anxiety or fear. And so I do just want to add like a disclaimer with that. Like, I am only speaking on my perspective, right? That if you have like anxieties around sleep, or if you've also dealt with CPTSD and that's developed in your dreams in some way, shape, or form, if you need further help, get that further help, right? It'll be different for everybody to what degree you're dealing with it. And when it comes to healing work, you have to have that nuance within the conversation and understand where you may need deeper support. But if this is an area where you feel like you have it under your control and you want to explore dream work as a healing avenue, for me, it was a really wonderful avenue. Everyone's healing journey is different. But for those of you who are wanting to dive into dream work specifically to expand your intuition and expand your psychic gifts, it is a very powerful tool, very symbolic of nature, the moon, lunar energy, and how we must embrace both shadow and light within ourselves in order to have that full nuanced perspective. And it's kind of circling back to what I was saying before, like when you are someone that's, struggled in a certain area, you struggle with your intuition, when you allow yourself to enter an avenue of facing that straight on, you do become someone rather talented of some sort in that area, because you're willing to embrace the more difficult side of it, at the same time the really exciting side of it, which I do want to promote that a lot. Like your dreams could be really exciting and it could lead to other avenues over time of like astral projection if that's something you're interested in, and working with lucidity within dreams. That is something that can develop. And so I encourage you to start with this simple base layer of identifying your reason of why you want to enter dream work, looking at how you're approaching your rituals before sleep, changing those rituals and sticking to them consistently, setting an intention before you go to bed. And the first thing you do when you wake up is exercising that memory recall through writing of some kind. And you can even incorporate some of your craft into this. There are herbs that are used to promote lucidity within dreams. You can look into having these herbs as like a cup of tea before bed, looking into teas that are safe to drink before bed that promote remembrance of dreams. But you can also just put these in a sachet. You could put the moon tarot card under your pillow with a sachet of lavender, mugwort, rosemary, with writing an intention of what you want clarity on within a dream, what you want to promote. And this can help aid you in alignment to that energy to help promote dreams. So coming back to finish, a reflection that I think can help in developing dream work to connect to your intuition, developing your psychic gifts and self-discovery and self-trust is to ask yourself, what part of yourself tends to show up when the world gets quiet? And whatever that answer is can be the doorway that can help you understanding what needs to be looked at, potentially worked through in order to deepen your dream work practice. For me, that was fear. And I had to start facing my fears more head on in order to develop a practice and ritualize my evening routine to actually find, a very empowering transition into a deeper understanding of self and intuition. But that might be for you, that maybe in silence, when an avoidance comes up, you find yourself so resistant, you find yourself yearning to go to your phone or yearning to read a book or turn on the TV or turn on music. What happens when you sit in complete silence? That can give you an answer of what you may need to ritualize in the evening to aid or to ease in order to begin to step into that dream world. And a lot of the times it's just needing to create more space for stillness, more space for quiet time, more space for intention in order to prep the foundation to where your dreams, aka your subconscious, can speak to you more clearly. From that place, as it develops, give it time, but as it develops, you can ask for signs in your dreams. You can ask for spirit guides to communicate with you. And we will be talking more about this in my online coven. So what inspired today's podcast is that the coven voted for this month, our theme to be astral projection and dream work. So everything we talked about today will be going into deeper, specifically the aspect of how to connect with your spirit guides through the dream world. We'll be talking about specific sacred practices you can do to amplify your dreams and intuition. And we'll be talking about the history and lore around astral projection and how you can begin to dip your toe into astral projection if you're interested. My online coven gathers every month, once a month. We dive into different themes that the coven gets to vote on, and we dive into the history and lore and sacred practices, all with the support of a coven. You don't only gain access to these virtual gatherings, you also gain access to our group chat, a place where you could connect with other witches, ask questions, express yourself. Every Monday, I upload a collective oracle card, and it's just a really great space to connect with other witchy women. As a Scarlet Rose member, you also gain access to the Scarlet Rose Library. This library I've curated to include workbooks, meditations, and online courses that could deep dive into different areas of witchcraft. It's really just a great place to find resources. And every month I upload a new one. There are so many more benefits to the Scarlet Rose Coven, but I'll let you explore that yourself. I'll put more details down in the caption below. And you can also click the link in my bio, click the Covens tab, and you'll find all the information there. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed this video and that it gave you some perspective, that you found something that can begin to help guide your journey into dream work, and you feel a little bit more certain about why you want to enter into this practice. Let me know how your dream work exploration is going. I love to hear about people's dreams. I love to hear about rituals that other witches do that help them. I definitely love the advice and I add it to my own practice. So feel free to share. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to this podcast. I have new episodes every Thursday, and I'll see you back here soon. Much love.